What is one moment when you realized you just screwed up? Not my screw up necessarily, but I invited a friend over for a barbecue. They didn't know anyone and has never been to my house, but seemed really eager to go. So I was a little irritated that he was almost 2 hours late. I was just about to text him when I happened to look over my neighbor's fence. The neighbor was also having a barbecue. It was like it happened in slow motion. I saw my friend in the neighbor's yard chatting up some old lady, our eyes locked. I saw the realization literally hit his face. Still laugh about it. I swear, the guy turned white. Game is game. Story 2. Holiday party at a friend's house. I'd never been in a luxurious neighborhood. I was unfamiliar with completely illegible house numbers plastered somewhere illogical. Parked in the street and had to walk through newer construction townhomes with long goddamn staircases and 2-inch tall house numbers. Heard a party going and thought, well, this has to be them. Who else would be having a party with this many people over? Waltz right in, say hi to the dog, start chatting with various people, grab a drink and start thinking, I should recognize at least 3 people here. I wonder where they are. I was asked the inevitable, so how do you know Jack and Jill? Oh, right, I don't. I think I'm at the wrong house. The hosts were super cool about it, knew my friends and pointed me in the direction of their actual house. Met up with my friends and regaled them with a story of confusion. It was wildly embarrassing, but swiftly forgot after a few drinks. Story 3. One time I was throwing a party or something and copy-pasted the same text to a bunch of people. Before group chats were big. I had forgotten to invite one girl I worked with, so I hit paste and sent a little later. I forgot that I wanted to save some corn link or something and sent her that instead. I came up with some BS excuse that it was a link some weird friend had sent me or something, but holy crap, I almost crawled out of embarrassment. Story 4. It's been almost 30 years since this happened, and I still have nightmares. Freshman year of college. The first set of college finals, I was totally prepared and ready to take them all. I had almost straight A's going into finals. I go to my last one, which was a throwaway 3 credits of introduction to sociology. I sit down and ready to ace it and look up at the board to see Biology 103. That's weird. I pull on my calendar. The sociology final was yesterday. Dang. Story 5. I was at a bar chatting with some friends. My girlfriend was across the room sitting with some other friends. Some intoxicated dude showed up and started doing inappropriate stuff. I jumped up, pushed him away, and yelled, "Screw off." Then he turned around and I realized he was like twice my size and not in the fat way, in a tall, muscular way. I mean, I did the right thing, but if the bartender hadn't leapt over the bar and jumped in between us immediately, that guy would have wiped the freaking floor with me. The moment the dude turned around, I thought, crap, this is gonna hurt. Story 6. I had a moment during a dental cleaning about 15 years ago when the hygienist was flossing between my teeth and above the taste from my gums. There was this overwhelming awful taste from all the crap that got trapped between my teeth and rotted, and was then being pulled out by the floss. That was after she'd spent 30 minutes scraping calculus off my teeth. I was always good about brushing, but didn't do anything else back then, and I wore retainers at night, which makes your mouth completely nasty. That was the moment when I realized just how awful my dental hygiene was, and it disgusted me. After that appointment, I slowly became obsessed with dental hygiene. At my last cleaning, the dentist told me, "It's obvious that you take very good care of your teeth. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because it's working." Thankfully, I started doing that at a fairly young age. I do have some fillings left over from that time and a few teeth that had to have crowns because the fillings started breaking down, but I haven't had a new cavity in a very long time. I have a routine that takes about 10 minutes. I use a water pick, then floss, brush, and rinse with Crest Pro Health mouthwash. The water pick is what made a really big difference with my gums. It flushes food particles from between your teeth and around the side of your mouth, and stimulates your gums, which is part of what keeps them from being wounded. Story 7. A while back, I was doing laundry and noticed our washer had a bit of a funky smell to it. I looked up some home remedies online that involved baking soda and vinegar, and while I was standing at the washer, I thought, a cup of bleach wouldn't hurt. As soon as I threw it in and started the washer, my brain went, "Hey, you probably shouldn't just be mixing chemicals all willy-nilly." So I pulled out my phone and Googled vinegar plus bleach, and I went into full panic mode when I read the results. Vinegar plus bleach equals toxic chlorine gas. I proceeded to panic and scream for everyone to get the heck out of the house. Be careful with chemicals, people. Yeah. Story 8. When I climbed my school's roof. I was quite a heavy kid and I was out and about with my cousin and mates. After running around school, my friends dared me to go up on the roof, and as I'm not a wuss, I gotta prove to them that I ain't afraid to go on no roof. So after a while and a lot of help, I got up, ran around up there and had a bit of fun, and then I had to get down. That's when I knew I screwed. Nothing in sight to help me. All I could do was either call someone to help me e.g. parent or fireman, or jump. Decide to take the risk and jump, but to do parkour like I saw in videos, jump and roll. Ended up messing my foot. Calling my parents and driving to the hospital when questioned, said I slipped while playing basketball, but is still messed up to this day, and my mom thinks it was because of basketball. Lol. That's what peer pressure does to you. Story 9. The other day I was barbecuing, not paying attention. I had a glove in my right hand that's oven safe. Someone handed me a beer and proceeded to talk to me. I took the beer with my right hand. I then opened the barbecue and grabbed the top grill with my left, unprotected. I had to adjust it, pulled it halfway out before the heat registered. Once it did, the realization was pretty instant. The blisters were bad for over a week. Story 10. I've told this story before. I had invited this guy over to my place for dinner after we'd been casually seeing each other for 3 weeks or so. Things were going pretty well. We were chatting, getting along like a house on fire, and he was helping me cook dinner when I started to feel extremely intestinally unwell. I've always been kind of a private pooper, and I could tell that this one wasn't going to be fun, so I asked him if he'd pop down to the shop at the end of the road to grab a bottle of wine for dinner. He agreed and toddled off down the street, and as soon as he was gone, I raced to the bathroom and relieved myself with something roughly akin to the force of picture a rocket launch, but in reverse. I took a minute to catch my breath, reached over to the toilet roll holder, and came back empty. Well, crap. No matter, I had a full 9-pack of toilet paper in the back room. I didn't have spare to keep it in my tiny bathroom. It was a very small apartment, so I usually just grabbed a roll or two, and he'd only just gone. And plenty of time. Cue to me 30 seconds later, pants around my ankles, awkwardly shimmying my way down the central hallway of my flat when I hear a still small voice from behind me. What are you doing? Turns out he'd managed to get to the shop and back in record time was sitting on my couch in my living room with a perfect view of my little burlesque. I was framed in the doorway like a gosh darn Renaissance painting. I felt like I was unintentionally giving him the most disastrously awkward welcome in the history of dating. It's very difficult to have a civilized dinner after that. Story 11. Director, driller, and locator of 10 years here. Drilling in Miami quite a few years ago and was doing a fairly deep road crossing. Half a rod under the road, I felt a pop and proceeded to see a 30-foot tall crap stream shoot out of the road. I just drilled into a 12-inch unmarked force main sewer. If you have ever seen a 30-foot stream of raw sewage, you will never forget the smell. Story 12. New Year's Eve, 1999, I called a woman I was very good friends with. Friends only. I was firmly in the friend zone at the time. She was also my boss. I'd way too much to drink and was not in any way considered sober or even slightly so. I was angry as a fart. I proceeded to tell this woman how I felt about her, what I wished to do with her, and how I wanted to do it. I told her this for about 45 minutes. Afterwards, I continued to drink. Several days later, back at work, she called me to the office and asked me why I'd called her a New Year. I pulled a blank. I honestly could not remember a thing. She also informed me that several minutes into the conversation or monologue, she handed the phone over to her mother. I still pulled a blank. In fact, I was so convinced that nothing happened, I was sure she was winding me up. If anything like that had happened after all, why was she still even talking to me, let alone letting me continue to work with her? She insisted that I called and refused to believe her. It was not until late January when I received my detailed mobile phone bill that showed a 48-minute phone call to her number late on December 31st that I finally had to believe her. The difficult part was facing her mother after my boss and I became an item. We're now very happily married, but even now my mother-in-law still takes the anger out of me over that phone call. My wife, however, is very happy. Oh my gosh, does that actually work? I'm taking notes. Story 13. Here's a good one, which happened last week. I had a little too much beer and passed out at around 2 a.m. It was a couple of hours after I woke up and had this feeling of taking a crap, but at the same time I felt like retching up. As I ran towards the washroom, I thought definitely I'm gonna retch, but nothing came out. I was waiting on all four when I decided it's time to take a crap. Big freaking mistake. Halfway through, I realized I screwed up. Retch all over the floor. The worst part is I had to sit there 10 more minutes while I finished pooping. Disgusting. Story 14. I was a young software engineer working for a startup in 1998. I wrote about a week's worth of code, images and HTML. There was this funny file named !tilde in the directory. I wasn't sure how it got there, but I wanted it gone before I checked everything into CVS. No problem. Remove recursively !***. I discovered my error a few seconds later when the directory listing contained nothing. No code, images, or HTML. Turns out !* is a shell wildcard character matching any one character. Combined with asterisk, all files got deleted. It was at this moment I knew I messed up. Luckily, I was using Linux. E2FS file systems had a utility called debugfs, which allowed me to list deleted inodes and dump them to new files. It took the better part of a day to figure it all out since this was before Google. I recovered the entire project. Well, that was close. Story 15. Halloween 2011. 3 men knock on the door, all wearing masks. I laugh it off thinking it's some friends being stupid. I lock the door. Handle flies down. Door gets kicked open. Realize I'm messed up, and within seconds, I've got my hands and feet bound whilst they begin to trash and rob the place. I escaped when my feet got loose, slipped my hands over my skinny back. Thank you, high metabolism. Ran to a window, opened it, climbed out and jumped from the first floor window. Broke a ton and sprinted to a neighbor's house. I have messed up knees and feet and PTSD at Halloween time. Get anxiety when someone knocks on the door regardless of the time of the year. Got fixated in medicine for about 7 years and struggled with alcoholism. Also really freaking sad that my favorite holiday was ruined. Well, some people have a special place in hell. I wish they were out there. Story 16. Going on a long hike while in the Marines, I realized I messed up when I saw my first sergeant with 2 rifles and I just recognized I didn't know where mine was. What happened involved copious amounts of yelling. Since I didn't want to carry my rifle, my command figured I didn't have to carry any of my other gear either. I had to divvy up my pack among my squad mates and I rode in the truck the whole way back so I didn't hurt my precious feet, or something like that. My fellow Marine sorted me out real quick. I felt like the ultimate crap bird. Being stuck on duty in my service uniform for the next 24 hours, yelling my general orders didn't help. Story 17. More years ago than I can quite believe. Until I caught a glimpse of my gray hair in the mirror was the last time I drove intoxicated. It was a summer lunchtime, and a handful of us had been partying for several days at a friend's parents' house. I was wasted, as was everyone else. So when a female friend turned up in a brand new 4x4 and promptly fell asleep, the obvious course of action was for us to borrow the vehicle for a joyride around the lanes of Somerset. This was actually pretty anomalous for us. Drink driving was always heavily frowned upon, but clearly under the influence of anything and everything, it all seemed to make perfect sense. For the next while, I was far too angry to know how much time was passing. We took turns speeding around the roads in what was effectively a stolen car, drinking and getting even more. My turn came last, and everyone was joking about our good fortune running out and us getting nicked or passing away in a fiery crash. Ha ha ha. Especially with me behind the wheel, as we were quite close to the spot where I'd been a passenger in a crash the previous year, which was thoroughly reassuring. I settled in and started tearing up the lanes. Can't remember what the vehicle was, but it was great fun to hoon around in, and a bit different. Automatics aren't especially common in the UK, and put on the Prodigy for the Ideal soundtrack. Turning the corner, I saw that we were at the start of a long straight, an old Roman road leading to Glastonbury. Ideal for just flooring it. So that's what I did. At the end of the straight, I made the turn with, I think, 2 wheels ever so slightly leaving the ground. And I'll never forget the definitely discernible shift of mood that caused all of us, yeah, okay, that was a little close. It's time to stop this. Just before I saw flashing lights in my rearview mirror and my whole world got ready to go down the crapper. I had no idea how long they'd been behind us, but even if it was a very recent thing, they would just have seen us taking the last corner on 2 wheels. At God knows how much over the speed limit, in a stolen car, very intoxicated, very spiked, with no license, nor insurance, and pockets full of substances. Until then, I'd always thought my fluid turned to ice was nonsense, but at that instant, I understood. I really felt frozen. The car went immediately silent, apart from the siren, which we could now hear. As I stopped the stereo, trying not to panic, just thinking over and over, I'm screwed. This is it. I'm really, truly, totally screwed. And everyone else in the car thinking, he's screwed. Totally screwed. Thank God it's not me. There was nowhere to pull in for what felt like miles, so I had plenty of time to dwell on my imminent destruction and to weigh up the pros and cons of trying to escape them, which wouldn't have happened anyway in that car. Outwardly, I was totally dispassionate and calm, to the extent that later one of my friends said he decided I was either a psychopath or a Terminator. But internally, I was screaming, sobbing, and already trying to guess how many years inside I was looking at. Finally, I saw a place to pull in and put my indicator on, pulling back the hammer on my plan. I took a deep breath, made the turn, and the police car just steered wide and sped past us. The lights were to get us to pull over, sure, but only to get out of the way. They'd received a different call. I've never driven intoxicated again. Yep, consider yourself lucky, buddy. Story 18. Woke up in a small ditch in the side of a road. I hadn't slept and was making a long trip myself, thinking it was fine. I ended up nodding off at the wheel and woke up in a small ditch my car had gone into. Luckily, it was a small highway that was empty, so there wasn't anyone near me when I fell asleep. My car was also okay, as was I. But this whole thing could have ended very badly. People, please avoid driving when you're really tired. It's so dangerous. On par with driving intoxicated, in my opinion. Story 19. I play poker with a guy that wasn't as lucky. It was during the WSOP circuit event. No hotel rooms available, or were freaking $200+ if they were. He decided to drive back home. Fell asleep, went down an embankment, broke his back. No one would ever find him until it was too late. Had to crawl up that embankment with a broken back. He's paralyzed from the waist down. Unless they develop a robotic exoskeleton, he will never walk again. Story 20. So about 3 years ago, my dad's girlfriend, my brother and I went cycling around this lake like we do so often. My brother, 15 at the time, and I, 11 back then, decided to make a race with the finish being a parking lot. At the end of this parking lot was a barrier right before a bridge. It rained that day in the morning, and obviously my brother won by far, but I was still going at what for my age was a high speed. When I finally got to the finish, I had to slow down, but my bike just wouldn't. That's when I knew I messed up real bad. I ended up crashing into that barrier and hanging over that crap afterwards. My brother describes the story as so unbelievably funny because my bike was just small enough to fit under the barrier, so I drove on like 10 feet, leaving me behind hanging on the barrier. Well, I hope I made your day a bit better. Also, my English isn't perfect, I know. I'm not a native speaker. It was pretty good. Story 21. The year is 2015. A variety of mishaps affected my well-being that year, but this one was entirely my fault. The moment of realization was pretty strong, so it popped into my head on reading this thread. It's June. It's my birthday. Because of the messy year I'd had, my annual barbecue featured more guests than usual. Friends coming over in support, I suppose. My barbecue had been sitting in the garden for most of the winter, but I didn't think much of it. Gave it a clean and fired it up. There was plenty of gas in the canister, so I proceeded to cook enough meat to feed a small village. This went fairly well, and I was down to the last few sausages when I felt a warm sensation around my shins. "Hey, the go kid, what's happening there?" screamed my friend's wife. A moment or two later, I realized what was happening. There was a 3-foot flame protruding from the gas canister, like a mini flamethrower. The rubber seal had corroded from the time it had spent not being particularly well stored in the winter, and with the canister being heavily used, it had decided to go full Ellen Ripley on me. There were around 20 to 25 adults and 10 kids in a very small garden at this point, so I figured I needed to evacuate. We managed to get everyone out the way, and I ran upstairs to get my tiny fire extinguisher. I exhausted the thing in the canister, but it was so hot the flames flared up again. Fortunately for me, my garden backed onto the fire brigade's premises, and within 2 to 3 minutes, the professionals were there and spraying all my food in foam. They were happy to take the canister away, saying it needed to be cooled for an hour or two, and they would do so while drinking a cup of tea. That was all fairly funny in hindsight, but it was soon overshadowed by what happened a few months later. Well, what happened a few months later? If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 22. So, my junior year of high school. I was taking a class called Sci-Fi and Fantasy. Predictably, we read books of said genre. We did readers' theater. Each person in the class gets assigned a character on a voluntary basis. Anytime the character says something, the assigned person would say it aloud. The teacher was the narrator, and roleplay was involved if he chose to. On a couple books, one being The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. So in the chapter of the book, my character, Thorin, had maybe 1 or 2 lines, so I was bored. This was the chapter where eagles swooped down and saved the day from the orcs. As the group was saying goodbye, I forgot how the book actually goes in the part of the specifics. Please forgive me. For the eagles, my teacher stops and asks the group, "Anyone want to like to do the eagle part?" Gazes around the entire class and does a double take at me. I'm a fairly outgoing person, especially in that class with role-playing, so I'm like, screw it, why not, right? And out of the silence, with zero warning to anyone, I just scream, "Caw!" and did the best eagle screech I could do. It was pretty spectacular, especially for being very much on a whim. Everyone stops and looks at each other. Now it's complete silence. Nobody knows what to do or how to react, so my teacher pipes up after 5 seconds of pure silence. "Okay, does anyone want to do the actual eagle part?" Apparently, they had actual lines where they said things. I physically cringed. Eagles don't say caw either, that's ravens. Story 23. I'm wearing beige-colored pants. I'm in the bathroom just before I'm supposed to have a 5-minute presentation. I pulled up my pants too quickly and accidentally whizzed some more. I get a huge stain on my beige pants that won't go unnoticed. Small panic attack in the bathroom. Eventually, I start making my way to the classroom because it's about to start. I walk through the crowded halls with a hand covering, probably looking like I have a limp or something. I'm grabbing the whole thing, just having my hand there slightly in front. I get in class. I sit down. When I'm seated, I'm safe because the table covers the accident. I'm worried I'll get called up second to present, but no one calls me up. Instead, I just let people present and go up last when the stain is all dried up. Situation saved, but man, I was scared nonetheless. Presentations are frightening enough. Story 24. My brother and I went on holiday together in Tenerife and went to a water park on one of the days there. Please bear in mind, me and my brother are both 6'4" and quite stocky men. We were deciding on which ride we should go on first. I pointed out a ride that looked like a rapid ride, so he and I grabbed a double ring float and thought they were a bit small, but didn't think much of it. Got on this ride, and after 2 minutes, we thought it was very slow as the river was going at snail's pace. We also noticed that there were parents nearby, staring at us, looking like they were in disbelief. I looked around and realized the other floats just had kids on them. It was a freaking kids' ride. Got out the ride halfway through, however, had to walk past all the parents to get to adults' rides. Total screw up. Story 25. I clogged the toilet at my boyfriend's house. I was dog sick with a stomach bug and he was at work. The plunger was no help at all and there was no way a plumber could get there before he got home. I was in an absolute panic. There's no way in hell I was letting him see what I did in that toilet. It was the stuff of nightmares. I would have to move and change my name out of embarrassment and had been a witness to what I produced in that bathroom. I had no choice but to unclog it manually. It was not pretty. I'll never speak aloud of the things I did that day to keep my boyfriend from seeing my poop. Story 26. When I was 7, my parents left me and my sister, who was 10 at the time, home with a babysitter who lived 3 houses down. It was in the morning, and my sister had just woken up and wanted cereal, but I had the last bit of milk. Being the petty person she is, she decided to eat the cereal dry, causing me to feel bad. So I went into the kitchen and put cocoa powder in the plastic cup. No liquid mixed with the powder. Then I placed the cup in the microwave for 15 minutes, hoping to melt the cocoa powder so my sister could put it on top of her cereal. As if on cue, my babysitter left to go grab something from her house and left my sister in charge. Fast forward 5 to 7 minutes, and the whole kitchen was full of smoke. The cup was on fire, and the fire alarm was blaring off the roof. And I was crying Niagara Falls. I knew I'd messed up big time. My sister attempted to solve the situation by telling me to fan the fire alarm with a cloth as she opened the windows and dashed water into the microwave. Note that the fire was small but was big enough for water to not be able to extinguish it. Enter my babysitter, who was now dumbfounded as to how I was able to set the microwave on fire during her 6-minute absence. She then called the fire brigade and my parents to alert them of the fire. Let's just say my parents didn't take it so well, but on the plus side, a firefighter correctly melted some of the cocoa powder from my sister before my parents arrived, always crawling down from laughter. Story 27. First mistake. Tijuana. Naive to substances, I followed friends who bought some in a shady bar via the server. Mistake 2. Trusting that. The dealer directed us to a bathroom stall. Mistake 3. Doing stuff on a dirty toilet. This repeated. Mistake 4. Feeling invincible. We hit clubs, ending at a packed club. Feeling great, I volunteered on stage, surrounded by women, spiked and intoxicated. I was loving it, until they handcuffed me to a pole. Surprise, then came the shock. A usually respectable member looked microscopic. Blame the cold, nerves, or the weird effects. Humiliation ensued. Beautiful women tried to tease my mini-me for an eternity. The club roared with laughter. One even slid a giant toy between my legs. My friends' view? Hilarious. My view? Mortifying. Masked by a forced smile. The grand finale. A nice water dousing. Handcuffs off. I dressed and returned to my teary-eyed, snickering friends. The shame's gone now. They call me a little peepee. Lesson learned, Tijuana and I have a complicated history, but that's another story. Story 28. When I was a kid, my sister and I would play together on the computer. The computer chair we had was a nice old armchair, and whoever was spectating would sit up on the back of the chair. One time she stood up without letting me know, and gravity being what it is, I ended up falling backwards and landing directly on the back of my head, requiring 12 stitches. I just remember the whole way down thinking, what did we think was going to happen? I obviously had a concussion, and I remember being super dazed, laying in a puddle, and my mom came in and gave me an annoyed sigh and said, "Come on, let's go to the hospital." Story 29. As a kid in elementary school, the moment I fell off some playground equipment and immediately lost all feeling in my arm. I was walking at a divider that separated the mulch from the grass like a balance beam while wearing a jacket over my face so I was totally blind. Lost my footing. Went down and tried to break the fall with my right elbow. Broke both the fall and my arm. Paramedics had to cut my jacket to get me out while the school staff tried to corral all the kids away from me. Q6 months in a cast having to be bathed by my parents and without my favorite Scooby-Doo jacket. Story 30. At my last job, we had hired a fresh-out-of-prison man who scared the heck out of me. 6'7"-ish, probably 250 pounds of just straight muscle, bald, tattoos in the neck, the whole 9 yards. Just so you get a picture. Anyways, after 20 years in prison, the first thing he did was get a job and start financing a car. His first car ever. It was a nice brand new Hyundai. I was told to train him in sales, so we were about to set off for the day. He was parked to my right, and I went to pull out and heard an awful metal crushing sound. I immediately stopped and looked in my mirror to see his car door completely ripped off. His door was open as I was pulling out, and it caught my rear bumper. I drive a Jeep, and the rear bumper sticks out just past my rear tire. I was thinking, should I call my insurance or call my wife and tell her I love her before I pass away? I got out and got ready to get beaten when he started yelling, "Sorry, man." This man felt awful that he messed up my bumper when his new car had the door ripped off. I was only hanging on by the bottom hinge. He told the insurance lady, "I don't want no cops coming here. I just want to get my car fixed and go on my way. I don't want my boy getting in trouble either. He's a good guy." He didn't understand how the process worked. He kept calling the insurance lady baby and me a good guy. I thought when the lady said I have up to $25,000 of coverage, that I was going to give him $25,000. He kept saying no, that he just needed enough to fix his car. It took him a little while to understand, but I stayed patient because I understood the circumstance. At the end of it all, he ended up being one of the nicest guys I'd ever known and spoke so highly of me to my boss and peers. He absolutely made me change my perspective on judging people. Super great guy. We still talk after I leave the job, and that was my, "oh, I messed up" moment. Turned out all right, though. Aw, that's actually pretty wholesome. Story 31. I lived in Israel a few years ago. I was participating in a seminar where the Israelis were hosting non-Israelis for Shabbat. I'm American, from Friday night into Saturday afternoon. That Sunday was going to be Yom HaZikaron, which is Memorial Day over there. Unlike in the US, where Memorial Day means cookouts, traveling, and shopping in general, Israel's Memorial Day is much more sad since essentially everyone knows someone who was ended in the army or a terror attack. When I left my host's house and was saying goodbye to his mom, I said, "Have a great Memorial Day." I then covered my mouth and shook my head and said, "Sorry, it's different in America." The mom said it was fine and was aware of how different our Memorial Day is, but I felt like an idiot. There are so many cultural differences between Israelis and Americans. If only we had more of these conversations. Story 32. When a friend asked me for a lift into town, we set off, catching up on people we knew and had seen recently, and I noticed a car closing in behind me. I looked again. It was the police. He turned his lights on and waved his hand for me to pull over. My car had been pulled over quite a lot, but I was legal, so it was just an annoyance. As I was about to comply, my friend said, "Crap," over and over again. I asked him what was up. That's when he opened his bag. Inside were 2 large packs. One, from what I could tell, was a large amount of substances, and the other, he then told me, contained 3 ounces of substances. If it wasn't for the panic of what was in the bag and the position he put me in, I would have hurt him there and then. I had no choice but to run. If I pulled over, we'd get 10 years apiece for that amount. By the time I hit the unlit section of the dual carriageway, I had another police car behind me. I told him to throw it out the window. That's when I found out he was running it for his uncle. It wasn't even his. After fully shouting at him, he dumped both packs into the undergrowth without being seen. About 5 miles later, I was forced off the carriageway. I was going far too fast for the bend, lost control, and slammed into a wall. The police dragged me out of the car window and set about hurting me. They put me in hospital with wounds that took well over a month to heal. I had a police guard until the hospital discharged me. Then I was charged. My girlfriend at the time went ballistic and finished with me. When I tried to get bail, they rang her to confirm I lived there. She said I couldn't come back, which left me without a fixed abode, so I was remanded into custody. End result, prison for me, and my friend walked away without any charges. Story 33. Me and a friend of mine got intoxicated after our football soccer team won the domestic league for the first time since 1985. We were in the stadium when we started getting intoxicated, and after the trophy ceremony, we headed to a famous landmark in my city where a lot of fans were celebrating. It's a tradition to celebrate there after a success. He couldn't drive as he was way more intoxicated than me, so we went on foot. It wasn't easy getting there as a lot of fans were on the streets, around 60,000. When we got there, we celebrated until daylight. Then after the party ended, we stopped the car because we thought it was a taxi, and we told him where we wanted to go. And I realized it was a cop car. We paid a big fine and were then released, but I nearly had a freaking heart attack. Lesson learned, always call a cab when intoxicated and not look out for it. Story 34. I'm bisexual and I have a crush on my friend. Sadly, she's straight and apparently has a crush herself. I found this out just last night. Anyway, since I can't always keep things to myself, I decided to tell a couple of other friends just in case I needed to go to them for advice. This one friend, we'll call her Izzy, is in my math and gym class, which we both have with my crush. I told her during gym and she promised to not tell anybody. She lied. She ended up telling my crush on Lipsy, an anonymous messaging app. Luckily, my crush hasn't confronted me about it yet, so we're good, but she probably will during class tomorrow, so wish me luck. My crush is in my homeroom, gym class, LA classes, science class, and math class. I also sit with her and my friend during lunch, so yay. Story 35. Did too many substances at once and had a really freaky experience. I felt like I had just been spawned into this world and had no idea who I was or where I was. In just a second or two, all of it just hit me like a brick wall. I remembered my name and my age and that I just dropped out of university. I remembered that I was in my bed in my room and where my apartment was located. I remembered that I was unemployed, messing up my life, taking loans to pay for substances, and just being on a totally wrong direction in life. My hands were completely numb. They felt like big balloons full of TV static, and it felt like I was a spirit moving my spirit arms, and then the physical body would slowly, with delay, move its arms in that same general direction as well. Everything went in slow motion. When I would move my hand, I could see several instances or images of my hand from the starting position to where my hand was currently. And if I threw something into the air, I could almost just lie there and watch it hang in the air for a while before slowly and gracefully moving down towards my bed again. For 2 entire days, I could feel the delay in my movements, and my hands just felt foreign. I felt like my hands were way too big and hollow and had no nerves in them. Oh yeah, I accidentally almost ended it all while I was spiked. That's when I got really scared and made an appointment with my doctor. Still, to this day, a month or 2 later, I can't shake the feeling that my hands and arms feel a bit weird. Story 36. This one comes from my mom. She was working as a housekeeper in Manhattan at the time and got off the train with a bad stomachache and felt like loose bowel was going to happen. She wasn't too far from her boss's building, so she figured she'd go there. She goes, but he hasn't left his house yet and was using the bathroom. At this point, it's damn near impossible to hold in this atomic bomb, but luckily she had another boss living in the same building, and since she had his key, she went in and ran to the bathroom. She turned on the light, changed out of her clothes, and sat down. She forgot one step and didn't open the toilet lid. She sat down on it and had explosives all over herself and it sprayed across the whole bathroom. She had extra work that day. Story 37. It was the final day before I had to send off my folio for the Glasgow School of Art. The course was painting and printmaking. I had already applied to 2 other schools for illustration, which is what I really wanted to do, but I wanted to apply here to ensure that I had a backup. I was uploading all the photos that were relevant to the course when I realized that I only had, at most, a quarter of the required photos. All of the others I had were geared towards illustration. I had an hour left to somehow crap out at least 15 other paintings, take their photos in good lighting, edit them to reduce the file sizes, and upload them. I'm screwed. I said in a blank voice. I want to clarify, at that point, one school had already rejected me. My art skills at this point were freaking terrible, and the other school's class list was full. I eventually got into a nice college, but the fear I felt at this point was immense. I'd never really screwed up this badly before. Story 38. I was in high school and we had a few classes that were chosen to go to Veterans Day, I think, or something similar type event in the school auditorium. Not all classes went because it was not big enough, or maybe they had multiple time slots. I don't know. Either way. Anyways, it was very moving and a lot of people were starting to tear up and cry. I too was really feeling it as it was hitting home. I was about to cry and noticed that I was doing something and it threw me off. That I went from being present at the ceremony to an incredulous and wow moment in my head. It turns out I was smiling. Reason being is that my mom would yell at me a lot in an ugly way, and I had trained myself to the point that I subconsciously smiled in a time of sadness. It was a whoosh. Story 39. So I was texted by someone. Happy birthday, you fat mother trucker. I had a new phone and didn't know SIM contacts were a thing. I was going through a rocky breakup and I mistakenly thought this was my former girl's best friend. She would give me crap on occasion. I'll just call the ex's BFF K. Asked my girlfriend what K's number was. I deleted the previous text and was just upset at what she had said. Didn't know me well enough to send me stuff like that. I had indeed gained a lot of weight in just a few months. While I appreciated she had my girl's back while we were breaking up, this seemed like a real crappy personal attack. Texted back some very angry responses. She texted back a supremely justified what the heck response. It wasn't her that texted me originally. It was an old friend who was giving me crap for my weight gain, which is why I recognized the number. I was a paranoid schmuck, and I still kind of am, but I try to be more self-aware about it at least. Story 40. At the end of a meeting with the company president, my department director and project manager and I got caught up joking around and told the company president that I don't greet my director with a good morning, but instead a hearty screw you. The president of the company looked nervously around like he was trying to decide how quickly to fire me. Luckily for me, the director is the cool guy who doesn't get offended, and he deflected my screw-up onto him as he laughed and called me a witch.
This was a few months ago and nothing came of it probably, because it should be a huge pain in the bum to rehire 2 positions. I've since learned to keep the joking to a minimum around upper management. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.